Welcome to East Tennessee Pinball. Today I got this classic Bally Star Trek. It's kind of a mess. It's got all kinds of stuff wrong with it. I mean, playfield's a little bit rough. It's got patches of mylar with the gaps in between. A lot of wear between. This is all foiling up here. A post between the flippers, that's coming out. The rubbers are just dry rotted. Drop targets are nasty. Pop bumpers are pretty nasty looking. Everything's pretty rough looking, but those are easy to swap out, easy to make look better. Playfield's going to be a little bit of a challenge because there's so much covered with the mylar. A few places between, like where my fingers are at, there's no mylar, but most of it is mylared, so it's kind of limited on what we can do underneath the mylar. We'll see. So in the back box, it's got issues. That wire's soldered on to the rectifier board. That's not the original cap, but it doesn't look exactly fresh. That's the original cap. Original cap's on the soundboard. Unfortunately, it does have the original NiCad battery, and this thing has leaked. And this connector right here, those pins in there, oh, they're not. Yeah, they're kind of bad. I guess it was this one that were just horrible looking. Yeah, and that one there just looks like it burnt up. So I'm guessing this board, I know it doesn't boot, I'm guessing this board is not just corroded, but corroded and then subsequently fried. The lamp board looks okay, but the pins are, gotta get this focus on the pins, kind of mediocre. A lot of times under the lamp board, the pins underneath those look better over there. The pins underneath the corroded board, they generally look pretty crappy too. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn it on. Obviously it's not gonna boot. I've got the solenoid driver board unplugged, and I've got the MPU unplugged, so not much is gonna happen. Well, I turn it on and it lights up, or it turns on. That's what I hear all the time. People talk about their games, say, the lights come on, they think it's doing something, but it's not. That's just 6 volts AC. So we have the 6 volts AC. I'm gonna put you on the stand, and so, the transformer's right here, and it makes several different voltages, goes to this rectifier board, and this one has all the test points right across there in the row. It's got the 5 voltages, and then there's only one more that gets made right here, but first you got to make sure you get your 5 voltages right here. So I'm going to get my multimeter and measure these 5 voltages here. All right, so what kind of voltages we've got here? The first one here, we've got 6 volts. So that is for the controlled lamps. That's working. 190 volts, that'd be for the high voltage for the displays. Got 14 volts DC. That is for the what ultimately would go up to the solenoid driver board and be made into 5 volts DC. I'm gonna skip the 4th one here because that's an AC. Well, yeah, let me put it on AC. Pretty sure that's the AC one. Yeah, so that's the 7 volts AC. That's the GI lights. So I am missing this last one here, which I don't know exactly what it's supposed to be, 30 or 40 volts DC. This is the one for the solenoids. So we don't have voltage for the solenoids. So the game won't boot without that anyway. So we got a problem on this board right here, this rectifier board. And we've got other issues. It's got to come out and be worked on in any case, that being the wire soldered to the board. So you're gonna need a new header pin connector. Ultimately, well, we'll see, but fair chance one of the rectifiers is blown, the one that makes the solenoid voltage. Well, I guess I could check the fuses real quick. How about I do that? So we got a continuity test. So F4 is not good. So I'm going to pull out F4. Oh, jeez. This is a 5 amp. I'll check it once again here out of circuit. If it doesn't work in circuit, it's not going to work out of circuit, but I can get my hands on it a little bit better. Yeah, it's definitely blown. You know, if you look at it, actually doesn't look blown. There's one little brown mark on the inside of the glass there, but you can't see it much, but it's really hard to tell if these things are blown. So I'm going to go get a 5 amp and throw it in there and see if we get our solenoid voltage. All right, so I got a new 5 amp. I'll throw it in there. We'll power this thing on. Maybe it'll blow right away. Don't have anything connected. Well, let's see if we've got our solenoid voltage. I'm getting bleeds up there. Sure enough. Okay, so probably, I guess, somewhere on the playfield we have some kind of a short, or maybe one of these. Well, you can't see it, but if I scroll you up just a little bit, one of these transistors might be blown. So I'm gonna ultimately pull this solenoid driver board out. Need to check all those transistors, because if one of those is blown, might be blowing that fuse. So in any case, even though this thing is delivering all the voltages, it looks so sorry. That fuse holder right there, you can't see real well. It's completely tarnished, and I just don't like that at all. I'm gonna pull this out, and the solder joints on the back of this board, I'm guessing they don't look very nice either. So I'm gonna pull it out and we'll take a look at it after that. Alright, so I've got this thing up here on the bench. You can see how nasty that thing looks. I'll probably go ahead and put a new set of fuse holders on there, but I'm going to take this board off. So there's 3 bolts you got to take off. That one was loose. This one wasn't exactly tight. Now you get to the back side of the board. Let's see what all the solder looks like. And sure enough, I mean, that looks completely cold there. Yeah, some of these are pretty cold. So I'll freshen those up, and I'm probably, so the pins themselves, they actually look pretty clean. This one, they just, for whatever, they bent it up and soldered to it. Probably have to just swap out that whole connector there. Anyway, I guess I'll get to it. Before I do anything, I'm just going to wash this thing down so I don't end up incorporating all that dirt and solder. It just makes everything easier to work with when it's clean. That's just alcohol on a toothbrush. I'll get the front of this board a little bit too. Just filthy looking. So I'm going to go ahead and reflow the solder on most of this board, and then I'm going to remove the header pins on this one and just replace it. So I'll start by reflowing these, and this thing is going to really suck the heat out of my iron. I've got it cranked up pretty high. The last set, I'm just going to put a little fresh solder on there so I can suck it off a little bit better, and then just replace these because it's got that one that's all pin that's all mangled and bent over. Oops. Gotta move this thing around. There we go. That's a little bit better. This wire is right in my way. There, that's a little bit better. That did not come free. Try that one more time. I think I got it that time. Missed a little bit there. Alright, got that sucker out. So I got an 8-pin header. That one didn't want to go in. It's not quite cleaned out. See if I can get it to sneak in there. Still not one, two. It looks clean to the eyeball, but apparently not. Let me having all these wires on here is driving me batso. There we go. I think that probably did it. Nope. Yeah, it did. Well, I jammed in too far now. There we go. Let me try it one more time. There we go. I'll just solder those in real quick. Alrighty. So next I'm going to replace this fuse holder here. And you can see it's, I don't know, maybe you can't see, it's looking pretty bad, the lower one, but I'm going to try to, it's going to take a lot of heat to get this thing off here, but let's start with the top one. Alright, so I'm going to try to take this fuse holder out. It's going to be tough just because there's so much trace, it's going to really take a lot of heat. I don't know if I can get both of these hot at the same time. Maybe I can. Nope, it fell right out. Cool. Oop, there it goes, it fell out. I got it sucked out and just, there's so much solder up there, it just went right back in. This is one of the few times this thing will sometimes get jammed. When you suck in so much like that, it'll get full. I had to have two hands there to get it pushed through. See if I can get this last little bit out. That ought to do it. I'm going to get a couple of fuse holders and fuse holder ends, and I'll stick them in there. So it's helpful to go ahead and put the fuse in here for no other reason. You got a place to hold it up. You can get both of them up in there without getting too hot. And I'm just gonna see if I can dangle that solder right there and get it at least started. Okay, I don't think it will fall out now, so I think I can go ahead and get these four pins soldered in here. And I'm going to take another look around, just make sure, like, those look a little, I'm just going to reflow the solder on all these fuse holders. I see a couple of them that just don't look quite great, and it's just so easy to get to them right now, and frankly, it's hard, well, it's not hard, but it's a pain to get this board out. So I might as well take care of it while I got it out. Alright, so I got the board, the solder joints looking a little bit better. I'm going to just wipe off this old heat sink grease. Yeah, that's actually not that crusty. And I'm going to get it off the rectifiers here too. And I'll put down a little bit of fresh stuff. I'll just put it right here because I can see where they go. That's way too much. Perfect. As my VGG buddies recognize. And now these. By the way, if you're ever working on these, or just have a one, make sure that that heatsink is in there. Sometimes people work on these, and they won't put that heatsink back in there. I've seen a couple boards like that. And these 3 screws go through the rectifiers and screw into the plate behind that heatsink, and basically ensure you've got a good thermal conductivity to the backing plate. Keep those rectifiers, I wouldn't say cool, but not hot. One last thing I'm going to do, I'm going to pull all these fuses, make sure they're the right fuses, and I'm going to get a wire brush and just clean out these. I mean, I swapped this one, but I didn't swap all the rest of them. They've still got a plating on them. They don't look too awful bad. But I'm going to check the fuses and clean the connections behind them. These things actually don't look too bad inside of them. I think that's good enough. So here's the first fuse. It's 10 amp, so that one was right. hardly see this one. 3 amp. Nope. So this is a 1/2 amp. It's supposed to be a 3/4 amp. I guess the high voltage will run off of a 1/2 amp. I think I'll go ahead and put a 3/4 amp in there, because I don't want it blowing when it gets to its home, because it's underfused. This next one's supposed to be a 4. Can't read it. It is a 4. That's 5. That was a new one I just put in, so it should have been right. Actually, the one I took out of there, the one that was blown, it was a 5 amp slow blow, which is kind of wild. This is a 20, so that was correct. And this is a 3, and it's a slow blow, so the only one that was wrong was the high voltage, and it was underfused and it had not blown. So anyway, yeah, if you see them with the old school slow blows have the good ones, which are the old ones, have there's a couple different ways they do it, but they'll have a little wire like that. Some of the new ones will just have a wire with a little bead in the middle, the modern crappy ones. Anyway, I'm gonna go get a 3/4 amp. And I don't, wait, this is a 1/2 amp slow blow. Maybe that's how they got away with it. I'm gonna put a 3/4 amp fast blow. All right, so now I've got this gone through. So now I can put this in there. I'll check the voltages one more time, but I feel kind of semi-confident that this part of it is good. And then I can go to the solenoid driver board and start working on that. So I've got the rectifier board back in there, but I've got this connector, which was the problem in the whole plate time, where this one was soldered on. I labeled these left and right because they go with the left side and the right side. I should have back and forward. But anyway, I'm going to swap those out for a new connector. It looks like the 4th one in gets the little plug. 1, 2, 3. So that's going to go just like that. And I'm not going to repin this whole thing. Well, yes, I am. I wasn't going to, but I guess I am. I don't know if y'all can see inside of there. Probably not, but you can see the outside. It's pretty burnt up. The reason these things, some of the GI goes through here, so, geez, yeah. I'm going to have to just get all my stuff and repin them. Fun, fun. look at my video and figure out, or the schematics, probably just video, figure out which one of these pins that goes to. Don't remember. Well, I got out one of my schematics. This is for another classic Bally, and I've already written down here. So orange one is J1 pin 5, so that's where I'm gonna put it. All right, so I got the game booted up or turned on. Let's see what the voltage are. Going back here. Got 6 volts. That's our controlled lights. That's good. 188. That's our high voltage. That's good. 13. That's good. It should be 12 unregulated. So that's going to be turned into our 5 on the solenoid driver board. Get the last one here. 46. That's good. That's our solenoid voltage. And I'm going to flip over to AC. And we'll get this last one. And you got 7 volts AC for the GI lights. So everything's working here. So the next logical thing to work on is the solenoid driver board. So it takes some of these voltages. It takes a 12 volts unregulated, and this transistor right here turns it into 5 volts regulated. So that's what all the chips are working on. Nothing's going to work unless you get that 5 volts working. The other thing it does is it takes the 180 or volts, whatever, and this regulates it to, well, you can tune it with this pot here to about 180 volts DC for your high voltage for your displays. So that's this side of it. And then the other thing, you've got these chips down here, kind of like that serve as like pre transistors, and then the big transistors down here that operate all the solenoids. So I suspect maybe, based on the fact the solenoid fuse on the rectifier driver board was blown, I suspect that maybe one of these are blown. I don't know. I'm definitely going to take this board off. I've always swapped this capacitor out. Looks like that's not an original one, but it still could be 20 years old. That is an original, so I'm going to swap it out. And there's several upgrades you can do. Basically, you ground. This one is only grounded through the edge of one of the connectors. So you ground that to the perimeter board. The negative, that negative capacitor, and the negative lead on this capacitor, ground it to the back of the board. And the other real funny thing about this board is, so these chips down here, they need 5 volts to operate. Well, the way it gets 5 volts is this thing makes 5 volts. This one little loop you see here, it's a wire that goes from one pin to another pin. The 5 volts comes out on one of these pins up here, it loops around, comes back to another pin, and then goes down here. So it literally, the 5 volts has to leave the board, come back on the board, goes through 2 pins just to power these 4 chips. So a way to fix that is to basically tie this pin here and this pin, or the test point, I think that's test point 1 and test point 3 together on the back side of the board with a little wire. And that way, it basically duplicates what this is doing. It just makes it more reliable. None of these things I'm talking about are necessary. It just makes it more reliable. Basically, it gets that 5 volt solid without having to use this connector. Same with this, getting that ground solid without having to have it come through a connector. Basically, you're getting the ground from the board for that bolt there. Same with the ground for this one. But the next thing I really want to do here is just get my voltage. Let's see if we have 5 volts. So this top one, TP5, that one, well, I'll take a second here. This brings all the voltages in, so I'm going to have to plug that in. So I'm going to turn the game off and plug that in. So I've got the this connector plugged in. That's bringing in the 12 volts unregulated. So this TP5, I don't know if you can see that, but this top test point right there. So now it's showing 17 volts now that it's plugged in. So if we go down to TP1 right beneath it, that should be our 5 volts if it's working. 5.14, that's fine. And this TP3 should also be 5 volts via that little loop of wire, and it's also 5 volts. So we definitely have the 5 volts getting down here. Likewise, we can check the voltages for the high voltage. One of these is coming in, and one of them is the regulated. I forget which ones were there. So there's 262. So it's really weird because when you add this when the voltage, when you plug this connector in, the voltage for the high voltage down here changes. So if we measure it down here again, is it that one there? Yeah. See, before we were reading 180, now we're reading 260. It needs that capacitor up there to help it out. So we've got the 260 coming in, and it's regulated. So the upper one reading 260, and the bottom test point there, TP2. I think that's TP2. Yeah. The bottom one's reading 192. That's a little high. I'm going to turn it down just a little bit, and you got to be. I ought to use a screwdriver and get my fingers out of here because it is pretty high voltage. So that's 175. That's a little on the low side. 180 would kind of be like where I'd want to put it. You can basically run these things a little bit lower than specified. 179. That's good. If you run them a little bit lower, your displays will last a little bit longer. And the other thing you can do is look inside these things. So I can see the glow. I see a dot in the bottom of them. That means there's gas in these displays. So I saw a dot in all 5 displays. So these displays at least have the capacity to work. I don't know if they're working yet, but they have gas in them because they're glowing. So we have all the voltages for the game. We've got all of them for the rectifier board. We got the voltages from here. Still, I want to do some maintenance on this one. So I'm going to pull this, bring it over the bench, and do some work on this one. And then after that, then we'll look at the MPU. I'm guessing it's roached. I'll probably put in a Weebly MPU. But first we'll focus on the driver board. So I just did a diode test on all these transistors here. And when I say I do a diode test, I basically just compare the readings. Put it on where it looks like the picture of the diode there and compare the readings. Like it's a 0.55, 0.3, 0.4, and open. And I do that on all of them, and they're all the same. Normally, when you're doing a diode test, you're looking between like 0.4 and 0.7, but when their circuit's a little bit different. The more important thing is that when you've got all these circuits that are in parallel, that they're all the same. You're looking for one that's an oddball or a short. So either one of those things would tell me something's amiss. I need to swap it out. But I didn't see any of that. Just looking at the solder joints, somebody has reflowed this board before, and they actually don't look bad. The pins they're dirty, but they're not, I wouldn't say corroded. I may clean them up a little bit. One thing, so I measured the voltage, it was like 5.15 or so, which is pretty decent. You don't want to get too high. A lot of times, when I work on these Ballys, the voltage coming out of here, when I measure it here on TP1 right here, I'll measure 5.25 or even 5.27 or something. That's too much. So one quick and easy way to drop the voltage by about 1/10 of a volt is just cut this resistor off. If you've got the board out, you can take it out, desolder it. But if I don't have the board out already, I'll just snip it. Just cut it here and here, and just take that resistor out. Because this basically, having this continuity between here, increases the voltage. So if you cut it out, you'll drop the voltage about 1/10 of a volt, and oftentimes that's about, if it's 5.25, if you cut it out, you're about 5.15, and then you're in a kind of a good range. So what I'm going to do is I'll put it in fast motion here in a second. I'm going to put a new cap here. I'm going to put a new cap here on the back of the board. So this negative one here, that one there, I'm going to ground that, which I'm pretty certain is just bridge from across the tip there. So I'll scratch it off and just bridge that, because I'm pretty certain that this, I'll verify, but I'm pretty sure that this trace here is also ground. And then on the other, this one up here, that one, I'll ground that. I'll probably just run a little wire to right over here. But you can't see what I'm doing. I'll put a wire from here to here, And lastly, I mentioned I want to, on the back side of the board, I'm going to put a wire here between TP1 and TP3 on the back side of the board. So we don't have to rely on that little loop of wire, which I believe is between here and here. So I'll put a little jumper wire across there. And those are the things I'm going to do, and then I'm going to put this back in the game, and then we'll have all the voltages and all the power issues pretty much resolved, and we can rely on them, and then we can focus on fixing everything else. Alright, so this board's all done. I'm going to throw it in the game, check my voltages, and see where we're at. Alright, so we got it all set on diode test. See if what we got here between 1.12, that's pretty. 0.12, 0.12, that's pretty. Whoa, there's dead short right there. Between that leg and that leg. Between that and the base. Yeah, it's fried. So that's coming out. Put in a new one. So I got that thing unscrewed. I'm just going to try to get these legs pried up a little bit. They're pretty big wires, actually. Ooh, that was hot. Alright, let's see if I can grab my solder sucker. See if I can get it off of here. That one's still completely soldered. Need to dilute that old solder with a little bit more fresh. I'm going to trim that a little shorter so I can get my solder sucker down on it. I was thinking I need a longer little tube on the end of it, but really all I need is the lead to be a little shorter. Alright, so junk. So here's that bottle cap resistor. It's E710. They give a whole bunch of other numbers over here for the E710. The LM323K is kind of the more normal number. Got one more here in this package, so I'm going to throw it in. Alright, I got that new transistor bolted in there. I'm going to solder it up. So I got my solenoid driver board in here. I got the game turned on. I'm going to measure my voltages. So this is TP5, should be 12 volts coming in, 14 and a half. One below it's TP1, should be the 5 volts. 5, well, let me get these out of the way. .27. That's too high. I mean, it should be 5 plus or minus a tenth or so. So what I'm going to do is I am going to snip out that resistor right there. So cut it out. And that'll lower me by about a tenth. And that'll be, so I'll be around 5.15. That'll be okay. So it's still slightly high, but it'll be fine. Let's measure my high voltage over here. So that should be like 250. It is 260 and 184. Good. Okay, so I'm gonna turn the game off and I'm gonna snip out that resistor there. I can't see what it says. Let's zoom in. Maybe I'll see it with the phone. Here. R49 is the name of it. So I clipped out that resistor right there, and we'll see what that did to our voltage. Well, helps if I turn the game on first. One more time. I can grab the end of my multimeter leads with one hand. There we go. Yeah, 5.16. So yeah, dropped it right out of a tenth. So that's a lot better. Chips are happy. I'll be happy with that. 5.25. You're pushing the envelope on chip happiness. So I think I'm going to go ahead and end this video here. So in the next video in this series, I'll go through the MPU and the lamp board and the sound board and getting everything, the rest of everything up in the back box done, and maybe I'll do another one on all the playfield stuff. This video is getting kind of long, so if you like this video, click like and hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you on the next one. Adios.